got your hand with proof. So if you feed your family and he serve you shit, then you need a heck of it and he deserve your bitch. Situation cast fall from the sky or your life. Dwelling on the past when you was alright. When you was getting cash, what wasn't too bright. Now you love
Alexa, stop.
can't do nothing yourself. What niggas to show you how to come.
Some people really are. All right, well, shit. I want to make sure we on point. And we on a little early today. So I'm going to entertain myself. I did have music playing, but yeah. I don't even want them problems. Some people really are still dreaming. All right, well, y'all watch me sucking poo right quick. They are still dreaming. Some people really. I was grooving at that. That's one of my favorite Nite songs, Still Dreaming. But we was having a whole conversation that might be my favorite Nite song. That Kanye verse, but do me right. Nightmares of your dream girl make you scream out. Some people really are still dreaming. They are still dreaming. Something. See, I think I'm Teddy Pendergrass. I be singing and shit. So I got me a whole mic set up. Watch I be the only person that's watching. No one. Kuna Matata means no worries for the rest of your days. Is our trouble-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. I was in chorus in middle school, and I still remember from our winter concert, we had to sing Aladdin. So one song randomly that ever live forever lives rent-free in my head. Is Prince Ali, handsome is he, Ali Ababa. Man, that's me wild. That physique, how can I speak? Weak at the knees. Oh my God. And then it's I Saw Santa Claus. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So I remember all them crap songs. Keep it a hundo. We probably finished the book tonight. It's about 5 chapters, but them chapters some be short, some kind of long. If we finish before the hour up, then I might read some Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, Nevermore. Oh man, I told you. I've been missing. What time? ¿Qué hora es? All right, we got 2 more minutes. Doop, 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 doop. Doop, 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 doop. Doop, 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 doop. Man, I actually do want to play some music, but they be wilding. They'll be like, we muted your sound. My sound be beautiful the whole goddamn thing. Ooh. Man, it's gonna be terrible. Let's see. Damn, I tried. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I don't even sing Talib quality songs no more. No, I follow Talib. That used to be one of my. I tried that album, The Beautiful Struggle. Used to be one of my favorite albums. And then I follow Talib Kweli on Instagram. And that dude is wild. If you don't 100% agree with him, you a Nazi. And that's crazy. Dude be calling somebody a Nazi every single day. And hell, he called me a Nazi. And if you know me, one thing I ain't is a Nazi for various reasons. But one, I don't think they let me in. I'm like, yeah, they wasn't our friend either. God bless. Yeah, so Tara, that's the hazard of following your celebrity. I don't even know. Following celebrities that you like. Oh, 7 o'clock. All right, one last shot. We're gonna get this cracking. Boom. I seen that on TV last night. Damn. I thought I was gonna make it. I tried. You know I tried. I think I might got the little finger thing to work too. We gonna see tonight. New Talib Kweli. I looked at the I ain't even know oh man, don't be no hater. I ain't even know somebody that said one person was looking. Well, I thought it was just me. What the hell? Oh, I thought it was me checking. Well, y'all got a free concert, you heard? Yeah, I seen some more. I'm a never loving man without a destination. Ooh, what am I to do? My world is in the world. Sound like one of them old school. Like I used to sing on the Apollo and shit. Oh, listen, man, I got that thing to work before I started playing pool. And now it's over here like psych. Technology, man, it always embarrasses you when you got company and stuff. I was doing good too. I swear, oh, there it go. It's doing it again. Boom, boom. We back in business. Boom. So it might be working a little bit. All right, let me get my life together. I don't think. Okay, so I think I'm gonna do something different with that backlight tonight. Close the door. I got my diffuser jumping again. I think I got some coconut because I like coconut. Don't nobody else like coconut. Everybody else be hating on coconut, but I like coconut. Then I mix a little cherry almond in there too. Almondy brown. So put a little almondy brown in there. And yeah. Okay. I might need to boom boom. I actually put this on my wrist because I imagine I'm gonna drop it. I'm going to start enjoying myself and drip, 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 drip. How was your day? You had a good day? Hold on, I know I look extra black that way, so I gotta turn this way so you can see me. Did you have a good day? Let me know. I ain't gonna start reading until you respond. Watch, you probably somewhere doing something. And it's gonna take you 30 hours to respond. Okay. So with my little backlight, I can do all types of stuff. So, and one thing is I can set up my own custom lights, and it's supposed to bang the music and all that weirdo stuff too. But hold on, where we at? Boom, boom, boom. We know I. Oh, I gotta turn out the other lights, don't I? All right, I can do that. Yeah. Yeah, doing the same thing now. Nightmares. Yeah, I'm gonna get a smart bulb for all that. You know, you already know. I gotta upgrade my internet and my. Upgrade my internet and my Wi-Fi's because I need more power, like Tim the Two Man Taylor. I used to love that show when I was a kid. That's why I still randomly live rent free in my head. Okay, do it. Is you doing it? All right, cool. Yeah, so it's gonna change all the colors I like. Doop doo. Yeah. Better than yesterday. Oh yeah. You making you crocheting, you making an outfit now. Are you almost finished with your what is it? Granny patches? Your grandma jacket, grandma's hand. Mhm. That was one of my mama's favorite songs too. Grandma's hand. Mm-hmm. Bill, baby, don't you go nowhere. Grandma's hand. Mm-hmm. My bad. I ain't want the thing all in my crotch. That wasn't part of the plan. Let's see. Mm-hmm. 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 So you say you're still working on it, should be finished by tomorrow. Well, I'm sure you'll post a video, we'd love to see. We supports around here. Come on now. You get everything? Okay, you got my little disco light. Turn the beat around. You think that's better than green? No, I don't either. No. Ooh, it's dark in here. Doom, doom, doom. Take you at a rave. Well, that thing mess around and give you a seizure. You can't have that. And somebody be calling me like, this YouTuber's content has been known to make people have seizures. Man, ain't nobody got time for that. I think I still like that first screen. I changed too many colors that bother me. So you talked about reading. Yeah. You ain't know I make mad beats with my mouth too. Mm-hmm. Beatbox. I grew up in that era. So I used to be on punishment so much. So I used to be sitting in the room like every chance I got, girl. I swear to God. My mom be like, stop all that guy. I thought I was gonna be a b-boy. You remember I used to love dancing. So beatboxing and dancing went straight to hand. I got there, do the kid to play, and bust out with a Wilding out, boy. Something that's wrong with me. They nothing wrong with me, but yeah. I was a kid, man. So yeah, we gonna rock. You heard? We is gonna rock. Yeah, always. And you know what? It's funny because she used to ignore the hell out of me when I was a kid. And I used to be like, man, when I get older, I ain't gonna ignore no kids. I don't get it. But now when I think about myself as a kid, she deserved to ignore me. I act like, listen, when I don't got nobody to bother or harass, that's why school was good for me in that sense. Even though I hated that thing, it was good for me in that sense because if I ain't had nobody to bother, school always gave me somebody to bother. But when I was at the crib, wasn't nobody to bother but my mama. So yeah, she got it. And then she'd had a nerve to always be putting me on punishment and weird shit like that. So, baby, don't you go nowhere. Do, 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 do. See my little, what's the name? Change, supposed to be changing colors too. It's just a little slow, I think. Okay, hold on. I forgot to share this on our, give me a second. Let me share this on my page. I'll be back. Well, you probably still can see me. I just be doing shit. Come on now. Yeah. So I was about to say I wish I could hear you. Then it'd be fun. They need to do Yeah, so I'm about to say, I wish I could hear you. Still, it'd be fun. Wait a minute. To do, yeah, so live sounds and whatnot. Oh, see, listen, you hear the delay. You listening to me. Repeat myself. You hear the delay. You listening to me. Repeat myself. That's crazy. We ain't had that echo problem in a long time, so. That's crazy. We ain't had that echo problem in a long time, so. We done growed up. You heard? Nah, I don't need that. Come on now. I need that. Did I mess up? It seemed like I did. Didn't I? Watch I say I messed up. Because I don't see the comments no more. Yeah, it definitely say I ain't live. Oh no, it do say I'm live. Oh. Okay, cool. I ain't mess up that bad. All right, now we can get this party started. Let's get it started. Come on now. Let's get it started in here. I mean, I bought that goddamn Black Eyed Peas album too, right? And right after I heard that song, I ain't listened to it no goddamn more. Cause I don't care about no mess about. Let's get retarded. Let's get retarded. That's what the real songs say. Come on now. Oh man, I'm all over the place. I'm trying to get the lighting right. Yeah, this old big old goddamn ring light too. Big as your head. Okay, comments is back. I mean, do I ever, when it comes to this, do I ever know what I'm doing? Like for real, keeping it one hundo. Do I ever? I don't know. I feel like it's still be a little too dark. Hey man, I got colors in this. What's up? What about soft? Oh shit. I don't know. Ain't that much better? Nah. Kinda. Oh, today wasn't that bad. It was pretty good, really. I ain't really have a lot to do. So, man, listen, I'm learning. What? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I stopped doing the colors. I just did warm light instead. But I'll let it be. Finally, it happened to me. Yeah, today was pretty good. It was. I ain't have to deal with a ton of stuff, which is good. Right now, it's really just studying, freshen up, stuff like that. February is gonna be lit, so I'm still kind of enjoying the time to allow me to get adjusted to this new position and all that fun stuff. And then, yeah, um, get adjusted to the new position and all that good stuff. I wonder. Let's see. That's a little better. What you think? Doop, 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 doop. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I just gotta lay sideways. Now I need to lean back and allow somebody to feed me grapes. That'd be dope. Like, not clap. Man, number 3 is big in my life somewhere. I guess I get some understanding. What I need from you is understanding. How can we communicate? I know you did not join to hear me singing. For real. Tonight I switched it up. That's my last batch of that tea concoction. I used up all my black tea, so I don't have to worry about kidney stones. Yeah, okay. Mm. All right, let's see. Yeah, right. It looked like I really need somebody to feed me grapes and shit. Like I need one of the fans. Like, come find me and feed me grapes. All right, here we go. Chapter 14. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm tripping tonight, ain't I? All right, so chapter 14. Let me make sure. Oh, God dang it. What, I took too long? Now I don't want to, what? What? Wait a minute. Yo, this thing do a lot more because it just tried to bookmark a page. Come on back. What the hell? Okay, come on. Welcome back. Come on now. Wait a minute, this thing won't let me go back a page. Delete. Don't want no bookmark. Don't nobody bring me no bad news. All right, we're back in business. All right. Chapter 14. Malone left the patrolman and oh shoot. Doop, 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 doop. See, we're trying this new setup. We're gonna keep on going till we figure it out. You dig? You dig? Oh man. Yeah, I do like this better. You think so? No, I really feel like Teddy Pendergrass. Close the door. All right. Malone left the patrolman and went directly to the waterfront. He knew Parker Place perched himself on a stoop on the corner, but Malone forgot he was no longer the tall, gaunt detective the denizen of Red Hook tolerated in their crowds. Word had spread. As soon as he sat on the stoop, took out his notepad, the tenants of that business shut themselves inside. Boys on the nearby corners darted away. The locals evacuated in time it took for him to take out his ink pen. Nothing could be more conspicuous around here than a lone white man perched on a stoop. He stood, but before he'd reached the bottom of the stairs, the groan of a wooden door opened, played on an empty street. The Negro from Harlem appeared from one of Saddam's tenements. Malone leafed through his notepad. Charles Thomas Tester, that was the name. Despite what the patrolman said, he did not carry the bloodstained guitar now. And this, no, see, why you keep doing this bookmark thing? It's bookmarked again. Come on, oh, Jesus Christ, it's just turning pages. Oh my God, it done went hella pages. Never mind. I'm gonna work on this thing later. I ain't got time for it to be embarrassing me. Bookmarking pages and stuff. Oh my God. What is going on? I cannot understand this. Yeah, forget that. Oh my God. Sorry. I must read that last sentence. Despite what the patrolman said, he did not carry the bloodstained guitar now. And this relieved Malone more fully than he could explain. Mrs. Adam asked me to come and greet you, the Negro said. Do you remember me? His demeanor, even his voice, was greatly changed from when they met last time. The Negro spoke with open disdain and returned Malone's stare so directly that it was Malone who looked away. Your father, Malone said. Have you buried him yet? They wouldn't release the body, the Negro said, not until the investigation is complete. It must be clear by now, Malone said. He looked down and realized he held the pen out like a weapon. He did not lower his hand. I stopped trying, the Negro said. Malone began to speak, but the Negro talked over him. Mrs. Saddam wants you and the other members of the police to know that he has moved to the neighborhood permanently and won't be returning to Flatbush. Now, the Negro watched Malone with the glass-eyed interest of a cat stalking a bird. Malone looked back to his notebook to escape the gaze. As he's doing nothing illegal, he expects to be left alone, the Negro said. We'll decide when to leave him alone, Malone said coolly, and we'll decide the same about you. There were faces in every window, in every building on this block and the next, watching his role, his position, for the benefit of onlookers, if not for himself. Charles Thomas Tester, Malone said, that's your name, and you belong in Harlem, not Red Hook. They call me something else now, the Negro said, and my birth name has no more power over me. It died with my daddy. No, that's right. Black Tom? You expect me to call you that? The Negro didn't respond. He simply watched Malone patiently. I don't want to see you here anymore, Malone said. I'll let the foot patrols know that if you're found anywhere in Brooklyn, they'll pick you up. I can't promise you'll be in good health by the time they put you down again. Black Tom looked up at the buildings on either side of the street. Mrs. Adam is in need of a book that can only be found in Queens, he said, ignoring the detective's threat. I'm heading there right now. I told you where you're allowed to be, Malone tried, but his voice faltered. You shouldn't be here when I get back, Black Tom said. What happened next was inexplicable, difficult to even remember. Black Tom did something. Malone heard something. A low tone suddenly played loudly, as if Black Tom had hummed the drone note inside of Malone's skull. The detective's eyes lost focus. Malone became dizzy from the sound, and he lost his footing. He fell onto the nearby stoop as if he'd been slapped. His stomach seized. He was about to throw up. Then a tremendous breeze sent Malone's hat flying off his head. The hat tumbled down Parker Place as if trying to escape. When Malone's eyes finally focused, he was alone on the street. Black Tom had disappeared. Malone tried to stand, but he couldn't. He had to lower his head between his knees and breathe slowly for a count of 50. When he looked up again, a young woman hung out the third floor window of the tenement across the street watching Malone. What happened? Malone shouted. He could stand now, think. He clutched his head, patted his body, checking if he'd been shot or stabbed. He hadn't. His service revolver remained in his holster, though the metal felt warmer than it should. What did you see? Malone shouted at at the young woman. She answered, but Malone didn't understand the language. The young woman continuously shouting, really, the words flowing faster, but never becoming clear. Why hadn't he ever learned how to speak with these people? Malone ran from the block, sprinted back to the Butler Street station, stopping only to retrieve his hat. He commandeered a patrolman and a patrol car. Black Tom told him exactly where he was going, taunting him with the knowledge. Back to Queens for a special book. We're on 15 now. When they reached Flushing, Malone leaned out the door of the Model T, one foot on the running board. Even as the patrolman went top speed, 45 miles an hour, Malone kept one hand on his hat so it wouldn't fly off, the other on the door so he wouldn't fly out. But when they reached Maud's block, They found it impossible to continue further in the patrol car. The streets and sidewalks were too crowded. The morning when they put up barricades on 144th Street, the hordes of Harlem had swarmed. Now, instead of black faces, he saw white faces, but the numbers were nearly the same. The patrolman beeped, shouted for folks to move, but it was like yelling at snow to shovel itself. Malone jumped from the car, pushed into the crowd. Men and women bunched so closely together they seemed to be working against him. Malone shouted he was a detective, but his voice had a desperate tone, and worse, it didn't matter to the crowd. They actually, as if under a spell, they acted as if under a spell. What held their gauge? When he broke through the ring of gawkers, he had the urge to cover his eyes. Instead, he fell into a stupor, exactly like the rest of the crowd. How? He muttered. Only a week ago, he'd been at this address. He had met my aunt at the threshold of her home. Mr. Howard had been on his knees counting his money, and now it seemed my aunt was gone. Her entire cottage, too. The walls, the roof, the window, the little mailbox that hung by the door, gone. The front lawn, too. All of it had pulled up out of the ground like weeds. Nothing remained but the house's sewage and water pipes. They peeked out the soil, but like partially unearthed skeleton. The plot resembled an open grave. How? Malone said again, but nothing more. Malone scanned the area for debris. Perhaps the house exploded. No debris. The cottage had disappeared. Malone recovered and realized he was first officer on the scene. He turned to the crowd. What had they seen? He asked. No one replied. They remained mesmerized. Malone shook a few people at the front of the crowd, but they couldn't explain what had happened to the house. Instead, each one related a series of sensations: dizziness, nausea, a strange low note playing inside their heads. Most had been in their homes, not out watching the old woman's place, when these sensations struck. What drew them out to the streets were the woman's screams. Which woman? Malone asked, but none could identify her now. More police arrived, as well as the fire department. The crowd was dispersed. As people wandered, one woman approached Malone. It had been her who screamed. She saw the whole event. A Negro walked into the house, she said. I watched him from my front window there. She pointed across the street. I was concerned because we have two children and I want them to be safe. Of course you do, Malone offered. It's only right. The woman nodded. He walked right up to the house and the old woman let him in. That was surprising to me. You see, she's never been too sociable, not with anyone around here. But she let that sort in. My girl started crying in the kitchen, but I couldn't stop watching. I was so curious. She caught herself, looked at Malone again. No answer you give would seem too strange to me, he said. She looked at the empty plot. That Negro came back out that house with something in his hand. He tucked it in his coat. Then he walked back to the sidewalk, looked at the house, just watching it. Maybe he wasn't just watching it. I saw him from behind. When the front door opened, I mean all the way, and that old woman was right there. She was shouting at the man. She came right out on the front steps, and I actually stepped back from the curtains myself. I had never seen that woman, not for a second, outside of her home. Isn't that strange? But it's true. She had everything delivered for years. Then she's outside. She must have been angry. That's what I thought. She came down the stairs to put that Negro straight. Now, I don't know how else to put this next part, but I'm going to say it like I saw it. Right? She stepped outside, and the Negro stood there, patient as you please. And then it was like a door opened. You see, right there where the funeral home gate touches her property? Something opened right there. I say a door, but I don't mean like a real door, like a hole or a pocket. And inside that pocket, it was empty. and black. I don't know how else to say it, like the sky at night, but without any stars. And the whole time, my Elizabeth is crying in the kitchen. The woman dropped her head, closed her eyes, and held one hand over them. Then that nigger, he just, here she looked at the plot of land, extended her left arm and swept her hand, a brushing gesture. He goes like that, like someone shooting a cat out the house. Or when I open the back door of the kitchen, I use my broom to sweep the dirt outside. Outside, Malone repeated, his lip felt dry. And then I couldn't keep my eyes focused. I felt quite sick. I heard this sound deep behind my eyes. I've been letting my daughter cry on and on. Now, why would I do that? I'm not that kind of person. You already said why you do that, because you nosy. Then when I could focus again, I mean, without being dizzy, I see that man on the sidewalk, but he's alone now. I mean, the house gone, and the grass is gone, and that old woman gone. And the door, Malone said, the hole you saw. Now she held her chin. Now she held her chin, looked at the spot. I guess it's gone too. I wasn't thinking straight. I ran outside. Can you believe it? I was going to catch that Negro myself if I had to. But by the time I opened my front door, he'd gone. I stood in the street screaming. It was that, or I thought my head would burst with what I saw. Black Tom had the book, which meant Robert Saddam would soon have the book. Even worse, Black Tom had done away with my yacht. Somehow, with the sweep of his hand, if a mere lieutenant could wield so much power, what havoc could Saddam cause? Malone felt suddenly entirely small. And your daughter, Malone asked, was she all right? The woman grinned, shook her head, cried herself to sleep right there in the kitchen on the floor. She'd been trying to reach the jar of peppermints. Malone returned to the patrol car. He waved the patrolman over, and the two of them drove back to Butler Street Station. Malone spoke of what happened at Ma's home in vague terms. Property damage, missing persons, grand theft. He said nothing of what the woman witnessed. His superiors would have spent hours interrogating the statement, disbelieving for days. And if Malone felt sure, they did not have days to waste. Already, Black Tom had likely brought the book to his master. Malone must scheme a way to get the entire New York City police force over the Red Hook with him. He went to his superiors. Malone claimed Saddam and Black Tom were bootlegging in the basements of the 3 tenement apartments on the house and housing illegal immigrants from the most unwanted of nations. Finally, he added, the Negro likely kidnapped the old woman and dragged her back to the dusty tenement basement to commit crimes of degraded nature. Malone's bosses were duly motivated. Within the hour, the concentrated forces of 3 different stations were gathering an army off to battle. Chapter 16. How many more chapters we got? Let me see. Okay. 16, 17, 18. Excuse me. Pay all that ass. All right. The practical reality of moving nearly 75 police officers and the equipment needed for a full force raid meant squadrons didn't arrive in Red Hook until evening. By then, there were reports that 3 children had been kidnapped and were being held in tenement buildings overtaken by Robert Saddam. The children were reported as blue-eyed Norwegians. Mobs were said to be forming among the Norwegians in the neighborhood closest to the Gawans. And the police needed to reach Parker Place first. Ethnic wars would become a problem if they spilled out of Red Hook. When the force arrived, they cut off access to the street. 3 Model Ts parked at angles at either end of the block, just as had been done on 144th Street in Harlem. 2 emergency services trucks were parked in front of Saddam's tenements. The residents in the adjoining buildings needed no warnings, no pleas to leave. They evacuated before the police pulled their parking brakes. The residents gathered on other ends of the patrol cars, lining the stoops of their homes on the next blocks. All of Red Hook attended this event. Locals climbed to the roofs of other buildings or leaned out of windows to bear witness. They all saw what the police were unloading from emergency services truck. Theodore Roosevelt became the president of the Board of Police Commissioners in 1895, and though serving only 2 years, he began the process of modernizing the force. As a result, the officers had a bevy of weapons as they prepared to take the 3 tenements. Each man wore his department-issued revolver, but now, from the rear of the emergency truck, an arsenal appeared. The M1903 Springfield rifles, M1911 Brown and high-powered pistols for those who wanted to go in with a gun in each hand. 3 Brown and model 1921 heavy machine guns were set up on the street. Jesus Christ. Each required 3 men to take it down from the trucks. They were in a row. Each one's long barrel faced the front stoop of the tenement. They looked like the trio of cannons, better for ground war than breaching the front doors of a building. Definitely. When 1921s were set down, they were so heavy, chips of tarmac were thrown in the air. At the sight of the heavy machine guns, the whole neighborhood gasped as one. These guns were designed to shoot airplanes out the sky. Much of the local population had fled countries under siege in the midst of wars and had not expected to find such artillery used against the citizens in the United States. The 1921s gave Malone pause. But what could he do? He had called the forces in, and now they were loosed. He took his place and waited for the call to charge. The order came quick. Malone watched the first wave of officers storm the tenement entrances. The windows of each building on every floor remained shaded and dark. Officers entered each building shouting, hoping to cause terror and surprise. In the moment, the sounds of the interior doors cracking open could be heard. The neighborhood watched the police work. Some looked curious, others looked sorrowful, but many were excited. The young men in particular thrilled at the violence. Boys cheered as officers tore through the apartments, though the only side they were on was chaos. Soon the sun set, and then it was night. Malone finally took the stairs of the leftmost tenement, the one he'd seen Black Tom exit from that morning, while the other police searched for illegal immigrants and kidnapped white babies. Oh my God. Malone went to Robert Saddam, up the stoop and into the lobby. Went the detective, went to find Robert Saddam, up the stoop and into the lobby, went the detective. He watched as officers ascended to the higher floors of the tenements, while others milled in the lobby applying handcuffs to the sundry, swarthy men who were being cleared from each apartment above. But it instantly struck Malone as strange when not an officer here opened or even noticed a door in the far corner of the lobby. It was as if they couldn't see it there. Malone approached the door, and upon inspection, he could trace faintly a letter written on the door, an O. The letter appeared a little more than dust, but when he tried to wipe it away, the shape refused removal. Even when he scraped it with his thumbnail to try breaking the circle, the O was not disturbed. Cipher, he said. Oh my God, it is wild. Cipher, he said. 15th letter of the supreme alphabet. Oh, is the 15th letter of the alphabet. Oh my God, that's funny. Malone looked at the other cops, but their backs were turned to him. They didn't even understand they had done it. The letter working as a signal, influencing them to turn away. They reloaded their weapons, called up to the men on the upper floors, held fast to their prisoners. Malone could have shouted to them, but they wouldn't hear him. If Malone hadn't spent his life in studying of such things, it was likely he wouldn't have seen the sign either. Malone tried the door. It wasn't locked. Why would it be? No one but Malone could detect it. Feeling anxious, he pulled out his revolver. When he opened the door, he nearly shrieked with shock. Black Tom stood on the other side of the door, but behind the Negro, it was Robert Saddam's home. Through Malone, though Malone had only seen the library from the outside, through the grand windows, he recognized the walls with inset shelving. When he peeked this morning, those shelves were empty, but now they were quite full. Black Tom returned Malone's amazed gaze. He looked immeasurably younger, or more innocent, there in the doorway. He held the guitar in one hand, not bloodstained. Malone felt so overwhelmed that by instinct he began to pull the trigger. But before he fired, Robert Saddam ran into view and slammed the door shut from within. Word. Okay, so that's that time. That's the first night that Black Tom was at Robert Saddam's house. And you remember he was playing the guitar and he opened the door and he saw the detective. So this the other time when they took the other side of the coin. Malone took his finger off the trigger, then looked back at the other cops in the lobby. Even this hadn't stirred their interest. Powerful magic at play. He grabbed the handle of the door once again. He stepped to the side so he couldn't be directly in path if something strange greeted him again. But this time, he found only a dark stairwell leading down into a basement. Malone slipped his revolver back in his holster. He entered and a rush of heated air came at him like a great beast's breath. The stench of a river water made his face burn. He stood at the top of the basement stairs and squeezed the door handle, turned around and get out. That was all he had to do. Don't hide your eyes now, Rob Saddam called from the basement. If you are indeed a seeker, then come find true sight. These words played at Malone like a taunt, and he closed the door behind him. When he touched the bottom of the stair, Malone reached inside his coat. One pocket held his revolver, the other held his notebook of arcane learning. Malone wasn't sure which he meant to retrieve, which offered greater protection in this space. He chose the notebook this time. This tenement basement had been expanded, walls torn through from the basement to the next. Rubble remained in piles on the ground, half a dozen sledgehammers in the corner. The basement of 3 tenements had been broken through, so now they formed a single grand space. Kerosene lamps stood on the ground at intervals, offering Malone a dim impression of the great room. Hadn't Saddam and his people moved in not even 2 days ago? This was the work of many men over many months. The magnitude of labor alone made him shudder. He did see one item he recognized, a great chair set at the farthest end of the basement chamber. Not 12 hours ago, that chair had been in the library of Robert Saddam's mansion. The chair was turned so its back faced Malone, and even from the distance, he could see it was elevated somehow, maybe on a mound of dirt, so it resembled a high altar. The basement became a twisted tabernacle church of corrupted God. In the middle distance, a shape moved out of the shadows. A man. The detective hadn't seen this man since his appearance in court, and now here he was, hands in the pockets of the same waistcoat he'd worn to argue his mental capacities. Robert Saddam, Malone said. He gazed at Malone, but in the semi-dark, his expression remained unreadable. And then Saddam, and then sudden, what? And then Saddam turned, speaking to someone still hidden in the shadows. Finally, Saddam raised his hand, beckoning Malone closer. Even now, Malone had the chance to escape, but he spied words written on the basement walls nearest him, painted painted as if with a broad brush in black paint. The paint dripped, so only some of the words remained legible. Malone found his pen, opened his notebook, and transcribed what he could. Gorgo Mormo, thousand-faced moon. There was much more, but in his poor light, Malone couldn't read it all. I can't explain if you like, Robert Saddam said. He moved closer, so quietly, stood close enough to touch Malone's arm or cut his throat. The smell of the river water came strongly, the soiled odor of muck. Malone looked down to see if the basement had flooded at some point, but the ground remained dry. Saddam himself carried the scent, not on his clothes, but from within. The old man breathed a wave of river rot. The old man breathed and a wave of river rot reached Malone. From there, Malone could make out Robert Saddam's features more clearly, in particular his eyes, which bore a weakened light, as if the man had aged 100 years since Malone watched him stand before the judge. Saddam reached for Malone's arm, but the touch was strange. Instead of holding Malone tight, Saddam almost shoved the man away. I'm all done in there, sir. Black Tom stepped. Black Tom. He stepped out from the middle distance, holding a bucket in one hand and in the other a horsehair brush. The brush dripped with dark paint. I've done as you ordered, Black Tom said, spelled out a welcome. Saddam let go of Malone's arm. Salam let go of Malone's arm and turned to Black Tom. None of this could have been done without you, he said. I only serve, Black Tom said quietly. The smell of the bucket reached Malone, an overpowered odor of wet metal. The bucket was filled with blood, the words on the walls painted with it. Thus, in this moment, when Detective Malone might have found the revolver in his pocket and killed both these men, not a soul would have blamed him. But he didn't do that. Why not? Robert Dime grinned. You want to see what more there is. Malone nodded, almost ashamed. Yes, I do. Robert Saddam sighed. It is the way of men like us. We must know, even if it dooms us. Then he turned and bumped into Black Tom, who'd been hovering close behind. Black Tom dropped the bucket. It clanged when it landed. The remaining blood splashed out, leaving a stain across the basement floor. The empty bucket rolled over twice. Black Tom ran after it. In that moment, Robert Saddam's grasped Malone again at the elbow. Black Tom squatted, the horsehair brush still in his hand. He turned the bucket over. It's all gone, sir, Black Tom said. Oh, yes, Saddam said, and his voice broke. But I was nearly finished anyway, Black Tom said, then added, sir. Saddam let go of Malone's arm and dropped his head. Then I suppose it doesn't matter. I suppose not, Black Tom agreed. No, sir. Saddam raised one hand, gesturing for Black Tom to step aside. Malone and the old man walked together, further along the basement. More words on walls. Malone read some of them aloud. Justice, queen-born self. Now Saddam spoke the next two words. Wisdom unknown. Oh, that's all. What? Okay. The supreme alphabet, Malone said. Almost, Saddam answered. One last letter is all that's left. And then the old man's voice sounded weary, where Malone would have expected him to be rapturous. From the street, as if from a distance of miles, Malone heard the shouts of his officers, then unmistakably reports of gunfires, pistols first, then rifles. It's beginning, sir, Black Tom said, his voice in contrast to his master, rippled with glee. Malone watched Black Tom. When he turned his gaze back to Robert Saddam, the old man stared at the detective balefully. The sounds of gunfire in the street escalated. Onlookers howled and screamed. You should see the rest before all of this is over. Black Tom said, go over there by that chair. Ooh, excuse me, I burned it. Excuse me, hold on. Oh, God. Then Black, okay. Then Black Tom pushed Malone towards the great chair at the far end of the great room. Malone didn't argue or take offense. He moved forward eagerly. Malone moved toward the chair, the great chair. His legs became stiffer, his feet heavier, and his mind swam as if through murky pool. Was this merely fear and curiosity, or had the atmosphere actually changed as he moved further through the room? Behind him, Robert Saddam spoke, but the words were difficult to hear. The sleeping king, whatever. Was that what Robert Saddam had shouted? From the street, the sounds of heavy machine guns shredded the air. Not one, not two, but all three 921s all at once. Malone couldn't be sure he'd heard anyone shooting from within the tenements. But why else would the police open fire? How long would the tenement building stand up to a trio of aircraft guns? The cataclysm was happening on Parker Place, and the battleground, the air here smelled of sewage and smoke and the threat of divination. He waits outside, Robert Saddam shouted. Not a distance of miles, but dimensions. The sleeping king rests on the other side of the door. He will be roused by a man of unwavering intent. I suppose that's you, Malone shouted as he approached the chair. A figure sat in it. Suddenly, a great wind picked up in the basement, as if the windows had been thrown open during a hurricane. Malone reached the chair and grabbed at it to steady himself. A figure in the chair for sure, someone big. Was this the sleeping king? The room filled with flickering light, and Malone turned to face the source. When it flashed in every corner of the chamber, became visible. Every shadow dispelled. Malone looked back to see Robert Saddam and his servant Black Tom in the middle of the basement, and behind them, a pocket open, a door. He no longer saw the basement stairs leading up to the sidewalk level. There was instead a great bubble of darkness that was not pure darkness. Through this door, he peered into the depths of a fathomless sea, and in that sea, the outline of something enormous, impossible to reconcile with his rational mind. I tried to warn you, Robert Saddam shouted. This plotting pirate means murder. The Black Pharaoh is here. The heavy machine gun fire continued on street level. 1,000 rounds, maybe more. The ceiling of the basement fragmented. Dust fell. The police were tearing the building down with the Browning 9-211s. I mean, 1921s. Not even to arrest the men inside. The tenements themselves were being razed. Malone clung to the great chair as though it was a dinghy in a storm tossed to sea. The seated figure, still in shadows, troubled him less than what he saw next. Black Tom raised a hand in the air and something silver caught the light. He pulled a razor across Saddam's neck. What? Black Tom cut the old man's throat. Saddam collapsed. Saddam collapsed, screaming. Malone hadn't realized a man could scream with his throat slit, but now he knew it was possible. Behind this murderous scene, the great door continued to open. The deep hole in existence expanded. Malone moved around the side of the great chair. He dropped his notepad and fumbled for his revolver. He went down on a knee and looked at the profile of the figure in the chair. He knew this man. He almost choked on his words. Mr. Howard, he whispered. The private detective sat in the chair. Even in death, he wore an expression of anguish. The top of Mr. Howard's head had been torn off. Mr. Howard had been scalped. The skin near the top had curled and slipped. Malone shivered at the great horror of the exposed skull. Malone's hand found the revolver in the shoulder holster. Black Tom stood over Robert Saddam, the razor still in his right hand. But he raised the left hand. He clutched the item Malone had taken for a horsehair brush. I had to be resourceful, Black Tom shouted. Mr. Howard proved, oh, it was Mr. Howard's head. Mr. Howard proved quite resourceful when it came time to paint. At least part of him did. Malone steadied himself and gave a quick pat to Howard's knee. A death like this was not deserved by any man, except for that dick. Except for that dude. He was a jerk. Malone rose to his feet. Black Tom moved closer to the chair. Malone wheeled his hand to bring out the pistol. Above their heads, plaster crumbled and fell. Robert Saddam, meanwhile, had yet to die, gone to his knees, stooped forward, clutching his cutthroat as his essence spilled between his fingers. He howled in bewilderment more than pain. Even now he can't imagine he won't triumph. Black Tom said, even now he can't imagine he won't triumph. Black Tom said, gesturing to Saddam. The Negro held the razor loosely. A casual killer now. His fingers were slick with blood. He looked at the ceiling. They'll bring this place down on top of both of you. Us, Malone said, hands still inside his coat. Down on all three of us. The portal remained open, and despite some part of Malone reveled at the sight, his eyes adjusted. He was looking upon a city, lost to the ages, at the bottom of the sea. And in the midst of this decaying metropolis, he saw a figure as large as a mountain range. Listen now, Black Tom said, pointing up at the ceiling. The maelstrom of gunfire and shouting on the street. This is a song my mother and father never taught me. It's one of all my own. The heavy machine guns continued to rattle. How much more ammunition could they have left? The screams of the locals combined as if there were a single instrument playing alongside the 1921s. And Robert Saddam, the poor devil, continued to live. He shrieked and his blood showered through his clutched hands. Each of these sounds were layered, one on top of the other, one with the other. A demented music, evil orchestra. It sounds as sweet as a ballad to me, Black Tom said. You killed the old woman, Malone said. She can't be killed, Black Tom exclaimed, but she was dispatched. I'm an officer of the law. Don't you understand the consequences if you hurt me? Guns and badges don't scare everyone, Black Tom said. How, Malone asked. How can you do all this? Saddam showed me such things were possible, but the old man didn't have the character to see it through. I had to be the one to walk through the doors and greet destiny. Saddam proved to be like any other man. He wanted power, but the sleeping king doesn't honor small requests. So why are you doing it, Malone asked, sounding like a bewildered child. If not for power, then what could be the point? Black Tom slapped one hand firmly on the back of Malone's neck. Malone had never felt John's hand shake. It was painful. Black Tom guided him away from the chair. As they moved, Black Tom kicked it over, and Mr. Howard's body splayed out on the ground. I bear a hell within me, Black Tom growled, and finding myself unsympathized with, wished to tear up the trees, spread havoc and destruction around me, and then to have sat down and enjoyed the ruin. You're a monster then, Malone said. I was made one. They moved Robert Saddam, who continued to gasp, but had lost so much blood he'd fallen face first into the floor. He gurgled like a drain. Black Tom marched Malone toward the portal, and Malone felt sudden conviction Black Tom would throw him in, push him through. Malone felt drowned in the distant sea, less than he did any other closer to the murky, doom-drenched Elder City and being sprawled amongst its ruins. No, Malone whispered, don't send me there. Don't send me there. I thought you were a seeker, Black Tom said. Well, here it is. Black Tom forced Malone down to his knees. They were 10 feet from the portal. The great wind that blew through smelled not of the ocean, but of deep corruption. It howled at Malone's senses, reeled, pummeled by a repulsive wisdom. Words and music, Black Tom said, speaking right into Malone's ear. That's what's required for this song. You can hear the music above you, but the words are not all done. One more letter needs writing, but I could use a little more blood. Would you like to help me with that? Through the portal, amid the ruins of the sunken city, Malone perceived the figure's enormous features, a face, or the perversion of one. The upper portions of his visage smooth like the dome of a man's skull, but below, the eyes, the face post, and curled tentacles, tendrils, eyelids the size of unfurled sails, remained blessed, shut, but they quivered as if to open. No more, Malone wailed, closing his eyes. I don't want to see. Black Tom brought one arm around Malone's neck and squeezed tightly. My daddy's name was Otis Tester, Black Tom whispered. My mother's name was Irene Tester. Let me sing to you their favorite song. Malone pulled at Black Tom's arm with one hand, but the other, he tried for his gun again. Even as Black Tom choked him, even as Black Tom sang, Malone kept one portion of his mind rational in the mindset of so much madness. Find the pistol. Use the pistol. Don't you mind people grinning in your face, Black Tom sang softly. Find the pistol. Use the pistol. Don't you mind people grinning in your face? Malone's hand found his coat pocket and slipped inside. He gripped the revolver. I said, bear this in mind. A true friend is hard to find. Black Tom cooed. Malone's hand came out with the gun. He had only to raise it and pull the trigger as many times as he could. From this close, he would be deafened, perhaps permanent damage, but Black Tom would be defeated, and this mattered most. Black Tom grunted. Suddenly he was doing something to Malone's face, but Malone couldn't understand what it could be. As Malone's hand rose, a new sensation crippled him. He'd been set on fire, so it felt a burning pain whose cause he couldn't locate. He only knew it was an agony so bright the world seemed to flare around him. He howled as animals do, and the hand holding the pistol shot out against his will. The pistol fell from Malone's hand and flew through the portal into that distant sea. Malone screamed and let go of Black Tom's arm. He batted at his own face as if he might swat away his torment. Black Tom grunted again, and Malone's eyes became wet. Something was being done to Malone's eyes, a tugging sensation, as if Malone's face was being yanked off. And Black Tom had a straight razor in one hand, and it was slathered with blood. Black Tom had cut off Malone's eyelids. Try to shut them now, Black Tom said. You can't choose blindness when it suits you. Not anymore. Through the portal, Malone witnessed, against his wishes, the moment when the mountain turned to face him. His eyelids opened. In the depths of the sea, a pair of eyes shone as bright as the starlight. Malone wept. Then the vision washed away. Malone's blood clouded his perspective. For the first time, the firing of heavy machine guns was drowned out by new destruction. The middle tenement came down. This caused the other two to topple as well, collapsed. To Malone, the whole world had sounded as if it had cracked in two. Black Tom finally let go of Malone, and Malone fell to the basement floor. He whispered one last thing into the detective's ear. Robert Saddam lay 5 feet away, finally dead. Malone made out the figure of Black Tom crouching beside him, dipping one finger into the detective's blood and spelling out something on the ground, directly before the portal. When Black Tom finished, the doorway closed. The basement stairs leading up to the street became visible again. The door at the top of the stairs crashed open, and half a dozen police officers stumbled down. They thought they were escaping the worst by moving underground, but those officers must have thought they'd entered the bowels of the severest hell. They escaped the collapsed tenement building only to find an abattoir. The corpses of two white men, the tortured from Brooklyn's own Detective Malone, the walls and the floor smeared in blood, and one Negro standing tall in the middle of it all. Two of the officers had turned and ran back up the stairs, but the collapsed mortar and brick above made it impossible. The other four immediately raised their guns, rifles, and pistols, taking aim at Black Tom. Black Tom walked towards them with the straight razor held above his head. Even as Even in his pain and delirium, Malone shouted for the cops to fire, a cry for bloodlust. The last two officers joined their brothers back at the bottom of the stairs and drew their service revolvers. Those 6 men fired 57 rounds at Black Tom. All right, let's see. Okay, so 2 more chapters. Chapter 17. We're almost done. We got chapter 17, 18. And then I'm going to wrap this up. Tomorrow's Friday. God bless. Detective Thomas F. Malone survived the horror at Red Hook and received the department's highest honors once the release from the hospital 6 weeks later. He'd been trapped in the basement for 29 hours while fellow officers and members of the fire department worked to dig out survivors. Malone was the only one to make it out alive. The list of the dead removed from the basement was Robert Saddam, Mr. Irvin Howard, and 6 patrolmen from the New York City Police Department. Every single body suggested death came at the blade of a sharp instrument, but no matter how closely the basement was inspected, such a weapon was never found. While in the hospital, Malone was visited by, among others, the president of the Board of Police Commissioners, the chief of staff, and 4 different deputy commissioners. Mayor Highland came to speak with Malone, as did Archbishop Patrick Joseph Hayes. A few members of the public wrote to Malone with questions that baffled the president of the Board of Commissioners. He vetted all such correspondence and sent none of it to Malone. A man originally from Rhode Island but now living in Brooklyn with his wife proved so persistent, a pair of officers was sent to the man's home to make it clear he wasn't welcome in New York. Perhaps his constitution was better suited to Providence. The man left the city soon afterwards, never to return. Members of the press did all they could to infiltrate Malone's room, but the mayor had him in a private wing at New York Methodist Hospital for fear Malone might tell the press anything strange. It was feared he'd spin his outlandish story, clearly a result of horrific shock, but also they didn't want him photographed. The hideous image of a detective without eyelids would be the front page stories seen around the world. I know that's right. The raid on Parker's Place had generated positive write-ups thus far. Nearly 50 criminals apprehended, half of them illegal immigrants to this country. Those 25 would be shipped off, the other half incarcerated for an extended time. The collapse of the tenement buildings was attributed to a storehouse of explosives those criminals were stockpiling. Last, the 3 blue-eyed Norwegian babies were never discovered on the premises. Locals attributed the rumor of abduction to the swamp gas of European anxiety, known to flare up in the neighborhood. So, oh my God, swamp gas. Okay. Malone healed as best he could. With time, came to understand he must leave the police force. He couldn't imagine entering another building, another urban block, without collapsing to the ground, shivering with fear. His superiors couldn't imagine anyone ever trusting a police officer with such a vivid facial deformity. The specialists at New York Methodist decided a set of goggles that Malone would have to wear for the rest of his life. He was given a solution with which to douse his eyes throughout the day, lest they lose their moisture and he suffer pain and potentially blindness. The first pair of goggles was clear, but this only created a magnifying effect when Malone wore them. The second pair was fashioned out of darker glass, and this was deemed acceptable. It spared passersby the sight of a man who would never again be able to shut his eyes and die. I wonder how he go to sleep. He must have got to use a patch. That'll be eye cover, but that's still why. That's still just raw eyeball touching. That's why. Just before Malone's release, the police surgeon who had been called in to consult about Malone's eyes was ushered into the room. He told Malone about a town called Chapek in Rhode Island where the surgeon had relatives, a quiet place, not urban, about as far as Malone could get from Red Hook, but still enjoy the benefits of civilization. A specialist in nearby Woonsocket could meet with Malone, speak with him as he continued his recovery. The NYPD would cover the cost of his stay, and it was implied that he would become a place. This would become his place of retirement. If he would disappear, New York City would pay the bills. Malone accepted the deal. And yet, as always happened, the story did get out. What finally made the newspapers was kind of a mishmash of truth. A man named Robert Saddam had became acquainted with the rougher elements of Red Hook, Brooklyn. The former member of a highborn society drawn into a culture of crime and terror found himself corrupted by it, lost in the ring of human smuggling and child abduction. Saddam made this last stand in the tenement on Parker Place, and the police were left with no choice but to storm the building. After a firefight, the poorly constructed buildings collapsed, killing Saddam, one private detective, and 6 brave members of the New York City Police Department. That, in its entirety, was the story that made its way to print, and eventually, even Malone's memory changed. As he spent more time in the hamlet of Checkapek, as he met with the specialist in Woonsocket, Malone began to doubt his own memory of the villain known as Black Tom. Hadn't he really been Robert Saddam all along who guided those awful forces? Who else but a man born into wealth and education could naturally equip to lead? These were the questions posed by the specialist, and they helped Malone to reshape his understanding of what he'd endure. Who could blame Malone's mind for wreaking havoc with the truth? Robert Saddam, that arch fiend, had killed Mr. Howard and 6 officers and brought grievous harm to Malone. But as a sign of God's just nature, Saddam's own Negro underlying turned on him and cut his master's throat. Wasn't this, no matter how horrible, more likely to be the truth? Negroes simply weren't that devious. The specialist explained their simplicity was their gift and their curse. Okay. And at the start of his time with the specialist, Malone would counter with obvious questions. Where then was the body of the Negro and the rebel? But the specialist waved such concerns away. Wasn't the site still being cleared? Even 2 months later, sooner or later, the Negro would appear. And of course, that's what Malone feared most. You are saved, the specialist said during one session. What has cast such a shadow upon you? The Negro, Malone replied. But this was not a pleasing answer. There was a story the specialist wanted, the same one told by the newspaper and by every other official whom Malone had been in contact. Imagine a universe in which all the powers of the NYPD could not defeat a single Negro with a razor blade. Impossible, impossible. And soon Malone was willing to be convinced. He began to half remember odd dream states, wherein he went down into a basement in Red Hook and found a portal to some hellish other world. And there he saw a manner of evil, but not a sleeping king, not a sleeping king. Robert Saddam was in there in the dream, and there was a golden carved pedestal, and wild chaos ensued, and somehow Malone was spared. The specialist seemed pleased by this narrative, much more palatable. He assured officials in the NYPD and the mayor that Malone was making great progress. Malone settled into his life at Chepachet and slowly rediscovered his interest in the arcane and profound. A handful of items had been shipped to him from the police department, the last effects of his death at Butler Street Station, and one item from the basement at Parker Place, his notepad. When Malone held that pad, it was like the first lighting kiss after a long time away from one's true love. Dust still coated the cover. Book smelled faintly of a river. Looking through the pages, Malone felt some older, more certain part of himself growing stronger. But then, on the very last page, he saw the words he scribbled that day in red hook. Gorgo, Mormo, thousand-faced moon. But this wasn't what made him falter. Instead, it was a series of words transcribed in the order he'd read them. The supreme alphabet. One more letter needs writing, but I could use a little more blood. Would you like would you like to help with that? Malone squeezed the notepad tightly in an involuntary spasm as he was transported back to Parker Place. His eyes bleeding and his face burning. And the Negro stood over him. He whispered something in Malone's ear. Then he dipped his finger in the blood and moved it on the ground. The supreme alphabet spelled out in gore. Malone could almost see the last letter, actually 3 letters short. Scrawled on the basement floor, the same words had been on the covers of the book Charles Thomas Tester brought to my aunt long ago. Even as he became nauseated from the memory, he found himself turning his head and inching his right ear forward, as if to hear the last words Black Tom ever spoke. What was it? Only one line. But there in the little cabin in Rhode Island, where he'd made his new home, the words would not come to him. Instead, the modest space began to crowd him, as if it had never done in the months he'd lived there. He feared the walls of the collabs would collapse and the roof would come down. Along the wall, he saw 6 officers lined up as they bent the stairwell when they fired on Black Tom. The way they dropped their guns and clutched at each other's ears after a tremendous echo of gunfire, and then Black Tom appeared at the top of the stairs as if he just stepped in from outside and moved down the line of them, cut each one of the man's throat in turn, all too confused to realize they'd been murdered. And right after, at the bottom of those steps, Black Tom made a strange but now familiar sound, a long tone and a blast of fetid air coursed through the basement. He didn't even need protection of Rada Saddam's library in order to move through time and dimension. He become a master star traveler in no need of a ship. Then Black Tom, the former Charles Tester, walked through the portal and he went out. All of this returned to Malone there in the cabin. He couldn't stay inside. He ran out but still felt unguarded. He walked down the Chepachet Road out of Hamlet to the nearby village of Pascog, slightly more urban with this tiny downtown and a handful of taller buildings. Malone told himself he'd come here to pick up some magazines, maybe eat lunch, but none of this was true. He felt himself hunted, hounded, but he couldn't understand what might be following him. The stories and his specialist had used the paper over the truth had suddenly been torn off. Thomas J. Malone walked Sales Avenue, and soon he reached Main Street. He made a strange sight to a passerby, this tall, anxious man wearing enormous shaded goggles. He became more alien when on Main Street. He turned and faced the tallest building in downtown Pascog. He looked up once and fell to the ground screaming so hideously it made a horse-drawn carriage bolt forward. Its driver had a terrible time getting the spooked animal to stop. Pedestrians gathered around the odd man who looked up at the skies. They asked after him A child was sent to fetch the local sheriff, but the man only gawped at the skyline, such as it was, and his mouth quivered as if he were about to bawl. What had happened? The crowd wondered aloud. What did he see? Many dismissed Malone as a drunk or a madman, but a handful, the more sensitive soul, followed his sightline. For a moment, all of them glanced at an abhorrent face in the looming crowd. Each saw that Malone had seen, the thing that had brought him to the ground. A pair of inhuman eyes stared down at them from the heavens, shining like starlight. Yeah. Then and there, Malone finally appeared, finally heard the last words Black Tom whispered in the basement. I'll take Cthulhu over you devils any day. Then Malone returned to himself and realizing he made a scene, he apologized to the gathered townspeople. After explaining himself to the local constable, he wandered back to his cabin in Kapchak and became, for a short of a while, an item of lively gossip. All right, well, last chapter, we're going to knock it out. Black Tom entered the Victorian Society and took a table in the dining room, one near the window looking out on 137th Street. As soon as he arrived, he slipped a straight razor in his pocket and removed his jacket and vest. He cleaned up a little, but it hardly helped. His pants remained clotted with dirt and dark with blood. His shirt showed so much perspiration that it clung to his skin. Still, he was allowed entrance. The greeter feared him. Black Tom sat at the dining room table, and since it was late afternoon, the space remained otherwise empty. He sat with his back to everything and watched the sun glow over Harlem. He listened to the rumbling hive of life on the sidewalks and the streets. When Buckeye arrived, a plate of food had been set before Black Tom. He hadn't eaten anything. Buckeye had ordered his own plate, a meal made by a Puerto Rican woman this time, and didn't really look at Black Tom until he'd eaten two alcapuras. The greeter had sent out word that Buckeye's friend was in the Victoria Society looking decidedly odd. I heard about your father, Buckeye said after he swallowed. My father? Black Tom said this as if he had forgotten he'd ever had one. Where you been, man? Buckeye asked, setting down his fork. What happened to you? You'll hear about it, Black Tom said calmly. It'll be in the papers tomorrow, probably for a whole week. Then they'll move on to something else. Buckeye watched Black Tom quietly. He'd been hustling long enough to know there are questions you don't ask. And if you want to be involved, there are questions you don't ask. If you don't want to be involved, if you want to avoid being pulled into a court case later, I have plausible deniability. I learned a long time ago, be careful about asking what happened, because after you ask and they tell you, you know. Black Tom said I did something big, bigger than anyone will understand for a long time. I was just so angry. Buckeye nodded, ate another few bites of mofongo, and strenuously did not ask the follow-up question. I was a good man, right? I mean, I wasn't like my father, but I never did people wrong. Not truly. No, you didn't, Buckeye said, looking his old friend directly in the eye. You was always good people. Still are. Black Tom smiled faintly, but shook his head. Every time I was around them, they acted like I was a monster. So I said, God damn it, I'll be the worst monster you ever saw. Newly arrived diners at the nearby tables turned to look at Black Tom, but neither he nor Buckeye noticed. But I forgot, Black Tom said quietly. I forgot about all this. Black Tom scanned the tables of men and women dining in the Victoria Society. He pointed to the rows of windows that opened to 137th Street. Nobody here ever calls me a monster, Black Tom said. So why I go running somewhere else to be treated like a dog? Why couldn't I see all the good things I already had? Malone said I put my daddy at risk, and he was right. It was my fault too. I used him without a second thought. Black Tom reached into his pocket and revealed the straight razor. Buckeye gave a quick glance around the room, but Black Tom paid the room no mind. He opened the razor blade, slathered in jelly. Blade that looks. He opened the razor. The blade looked slathered in jelly. Buckeye knew what that was. Black Tom set the stroke down on the table and Buckeye tossed his napkin over it. We need to get rid of that. Buckeye cautioned, looking at the shape under the napkin. You should have done it before you even stepped. You should have done it before you even stepped in here. The seas will rise and our cities will be swallowed by oceans, Black Tom said. The air will grow so hot we won't be able to breathe. The world will be remade for him and his kind. That white man was afraid of indifference. Well, now he's going to find what it's like. I don't know how long it'll take. Our time and their time isn't counting the same. Maybe a month, maybe 100 years. All this will pass. Humanity will be washed away. The globe will be theirs again. And it's me who did it. Black Tom did it. I gave them the world. Who the fuck is Black Tom? Buckeye asked. Me, he said. Buckeye scanned the room once more, then grabbed a napkin and the razor blade as well. He folded the napkin around the razor blade. Your name is Tommy Tester, Buckeye said. Charles Thomas Tester. You're my best friend and the worst thing I ever heard. Both men laughed loudly for a brief moment. Black Tom appeared as if he had been not so long ago, 20 years old and in possession of great joy. I wish I'd been more like my father, Black Tom said. He didn't have much, but he never lost his soul. Buckeye had slid back from the table, fused with that bright boot, trying to slip the straight razor inside for safekeeping. He discarded it in the river after he walked Tommy home. I wonder if I could ever get back, Black Tom whispered. He rose from the table and walked to a window. He opened it. At 4:13 p.m., Harlemites within 3-block radius reported a strange sound in their heads, a sudden wave of nausea. Before anyone inside the Victorian Society realized what happened, Black Tom went out the window. Buckeye turned in time to see him leap, but Tommy Tester's body was never found. Zig, zag, zig. And that is the end of, okay, you left, you came back. That was the last chop. Zigzag Zigala. Ain't that what RZA called himself anyway? What did it say? All right, so that was fun. Read for a while. I think this, oh my God. I'm tired now. All right, so thank you for joining me. I had fun as always. And we got to work on a new book. So I think I'm gonna make a post and we'll figure it out at some point. I shall see you Tuesday for live energy readings. I may have somebody do it Tuesday. I forgot I ain't even respond to them, but whatever. You know, I'll be moving in my own world. And if not Tuesday, I'll see you people back Thursday for book club and a new book. We'll figure it out by then. All right. So thanks for joining. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Later.